Welcome to the second episode of the JP Eisenhauer Show. I'm your host, JP Eisenhauer, here this week with special guest Connell Scruggs. Thanks for being here.
Anytime, JP.
And we're going to talk about college football today, so let's get right into it. First topic, Minnesota. The last time they were 9-0 was 1904 when there were only 45 states. How are they doing it?
I think their new coach is doing a great job. He's done a great job with the program. They won 9-0. I don't think we really knew how good this team was until they played Penn State and beat them. It came down to the wire, and Andrew's raising his hand over there. He's like, I called that. Yeah, he did call it last week. It's true. He has it on the record. But, yeah, I think the way they played against Penn State was definitely telling that they have potential and they're legit. I'll admit myself, I didn't think they were legit until I saw them play Penn State. And that game did come down to the wire, though. It was just a bad throw by Sean Clifford at the end, on the pick. Kind of ended the game. It ended the game for them, but I mean, they definitely shook things up in the playoffs and with the committee.
Yeah, and it really showed how complete this team is because we knew this was a good running team. But Tanner Morgan, 90% completion percentage, 339 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. He played incredible versus Penn State, and that was really a signature win for them. And that's going to be moving forward, possibly in the college football playoff discussion. It's going to be that one big win that they have. It's
definitely going to be – I think they definitely shook up the rankings because that Ohio State game that they're going to play, I think it's going to be – if Ohio State does what we think they're going to do and beats Penn State and they're going to go undefeated, it's going to be an undefeated matchup in the Big Ten Championship, and that'll definitely shake things up if Minnesota plays them close or if Minnesota even wins. Which, that's gonna make things really interesting because we saw 2 SEC teams a couple of years ago, and they ended up matching up in the national championship, and it's a high possibility you could see 2 Big Ten teams in the playoff.
Yeah, and this defense played great too against this Penn State offense. Antoine Winfield Jr., 2 interceptions in that game. He's played incredible. This entire defense played incredible in that game. And I think this is really a complete team that we weren't taking too seriously before this week.
Did Winfield have the first interception of the game where they threw the ball deep and it was 50-50 and he went up and took it?
He's a good player.
That set the tone for the game. After that, it was kind of like, whoa. It's like, okay.
Yeah, Minnesota's definitely a team.
I got to play.
Minnesota's a team you're going to have to watch going forward. Our next topic, Chase Young had a 2-game suspension for getting a loan from a family friend. He had 13.5 sacks on the season. It's really not going to be too big of a deal when you look at missing Maryland and Rutgers. I mean, not really games Ohio State's expected to have much competition in. But what do you think about this rule about not being able to get a loan from a family friend? He paid it off.
Yeah, I don't really know. I don't know the exact details of the loan. It seems like if the school's investigating it, it's got to be something a little bit deeper. But I don't know. I still think it's dumb. You know, if he did pay it back, I think the question is how he got the money to pay it back, and no one knows that really, and that's possibly that's where the question's coming from. But even then, I don't know. I don't think you can just suspend the best player in college football like that for four. I don't think it's 4 games anymore.
I think it got down to 2 now.
Yeah,
he would have missed Michigan and Penn State.
He's able to return against Penn State in the following week after this week. So.
Yeah, when you look at the situation surrounding it, he didn't have enough money to get his girlfriend to a game that he wanted her to get to, so he asked his family friend for a small loan. He gave it to him. He paid it back over the summer, and NCAA found out about it. I'm not really sure what rule he's breaking here, but I know a lot of NFL players and a lot of other professional athletes have a big problem with this, and they've had a big problem with the NCAA for a while now, not paying their players, not feeling they don't do enough for their players.
Yeah, the NCAA is just like, it's an old organization. They're really traditional. I don't understand the whole fact they preach amateurism, right? Like they can't make, which obviously the laws are now changing, right? The laws are changing, but it's not going to come up for a few years. But like the fact that you can't like sign an autograph, like if I was a player and I wanted to sign an autograph and someone would give me, I couldn't accept $20 for an autograph if I wanted to. It'd be illegal.
You couldn't sell it. You couldn't sell your autograph for like a charity or anything.
I think that's a stupid rule in my opinion, and I think it's finally like coming around that athletes are going to be able to be paid.
NCAA needs to have a lot of changes. They have to have a lot of changes in the future. I mean, you look at it, a lot of players and a lot of former players are not very happy with how the NCAA is treating their players. My personal opinion is you're making so much money off these players, you could pay them a little. I'm not talking about professional salaries, but you can give them a little bit so that they can get their girlfriends to the game or any little thing that they need. I mean, it's like It's such a small thing that Chase Young did, and they're making such a big problem about it.
Yeah, now you're seeing players like in the basketball side. We saw a high school player. I don't know his name for sure, but he declined going to a college and decided to go overseas to play in the professional league and make some money and get some experience that way instead of going to a traditional college and then going to the NBA. So he's going to be eligible for the draft, I think, in a couple years or this year. After playing a year overseas, and he's able to make some money and get some professional experience that way instead of playing at a college where they're so restricted. They can't work. They can't make any money outside of their sport. And you see college, every big SEC school, drops bags on players. They're paying them on the side, and you're having to go through that kind of way to get your players money and recruit them. Like, I think that definitely plays a big piece in recruiting is the bag men dropping the bag on them.
With college football also, there was a lot of talk over the summer if the XFL would replace a lot of the college athletes because they get to go straight into being paid. It's a small salary, and it's a way to get professional experience and go from high school to the XFL, then to the NFL. I don't know how serious some people are about doing that, but there were a lot of big names that were thrown around from high school, and I think it's definitely a viable option for players that need to be paid now. Like when you look at Josh Jacobs, whose family was very poor.
Yeah.
He couldn't afford a lot. He needed the money, but you can't get paid in college.
Yep. And actually, Josh Jacobs is playing really well.
He's playing great right now.
Well in Oakland. Yeah, and I'm also excited to see what the XFL is like. If it's just going to – I think the big problem with the – what was the other one?
AAF. But the XFL actually has – the problem with the AAF is they didn't have the money to pay
their players.
Yeah, they didn't
have money. They didn't have any. They didn't really.
Before they started the season, the XFL has everything already planned out.
Yeah.
Learns from the AAF. I feel like at the very least they're going to have at least 2 to 3 years, and if it folds, it'll fold after those 2 to 3 years.
And I think after the XFL existed before,
I like the idea.
And then it just kind of diminished, and now it's coming back. I think the main thing people involved with the XFL is they preach that they spent a lot of time researching and figuring out and planning out the future so that they didn't have an AAF situation where they just collapsed after like 6 months, basically.
Some real interesting players in there, but this is not an XFL podcast, so we're going to move into the next one. The next, Alabama and their playoff chances. When you look at scenarios where they'd make it and they wouldn't make it, Connell, what do you think about this?
Okay, so if you're an Alabama fan, which I'm an Alabama fan, what you want, I'd say, is you definitely want LSU to win out. And win the SEC championship. That's big because if Georgia wins the SEC championship, LSU is going to be that at-large team. Georgia's going to be in because they have one loss, SEC championship win over LSU. It's a no-brainer basically. LSU Georgia in if that happens. Mm-hmm. So you number one need LSU to win out. Then you need I'd want Ohio State to win out. I think if you have Ohio State winning all their games and have Minnesota have a loss. And also in that game, it'd help if Minnesota lost in the Big Ten Championship by
they need a big margin because if Minnesota gets close, when you look at a win over Penn State, a possible win over Iowa and Wisconsin, those are ranked wins, which Alabama is only going to have maybe one against Auburn. Well, for all these scenarios, Alabama obviously has to win out. Yeah,
they have to win out. So let's just assume Alabama wins out, right? Yes. And then thirdly, it would put the cherry on top if Minnesota lost another game at the end of the regular season. Obviously, that's the chances that they do is not very high because Wisconsin has shown lots of vulnerability since their win over Michigan. So, those three things. If Michigan loses in the regular season, I think it's definitely Bama has a really good chance of getting in because I think Ohio State's going to win that game, I think, versus Minnesota. So if those two things happen and LSU wins, I think Bama is the best one-loss team, so I think the committee would put Alabama in, considering what they've done in recent years. But you can't really look – you're not supposed to look at that, but I think that definitely plays a part in the committee's decision because they seem to favor the blue blood programs.
I think also you got to look at, though, the Pac-12. If Utah or Oregon wins out and wins out big, you have to put them in that conversation at least. And, I mean, Alabama's schedule, I know you can't predict who's going to be good –
because they schedule years in advance, so
but
it's just unfortunate like that.
It has to kind of be in your mind. Like you saw Clemson drop because of strength of schedule. Obviously, they're going to make it because they're going to be undefeated. They'll beat Wake, so they'll have one ranked win.
Clemson, Ohio State, LSU, I'd say are pretty. They're pretty locked in. But here's my thing with Oregon and Utah. Utah lost to a USC team that had their third-string quarterback in.
Oregon lost at the very beginning of the season, though, and college
yes,
football
but
committee.
I'm just talking about Utah right now. I'm saying Utah has that loss to USC, and just the way they're in the Pac-12, and Pac-12 just isn't as strong in the SEC.
They looked really good though against Washington.
But you think if it's a one-loss Alabama, one-loss Utah, who do you think the committee's going to put in?
One-loss Alabama.
Alabama, right? And
but
then
it depends on how Alabama looks in that Auburn game. Also, if they win real close game.
I mean, LSU won a real close game versus Auburn. So
yes, but the problem is Alabama not having a right to win and getting close and then losing, and also that first half versus LSU. I know you're gonna say they outscored them in the second half. They never.
No, LSU won that game. LSU
were destroyed in the first half.
Yeah.
I mean, it was definitely not a good game.
I could talk for another 15 minutes about the Alabama game, but we don't have time for that.
Linebackers.
But talking about Oregon now. So Oregon, you saw their loss to Auburn at the beginning. You look at Alabama, they went out and they beat Auburn. That's a common opponent. Alabama has the edge over Oregon, and they're both one loss. Even with a Pac-12 championship, I don't think the committee cares as much about that. So as much as like an SEC championship, which Alabama wouldn't have, but I don't think the Pac-12 championship is going to propel Oregon over Alabama if they were to beat Auburn because of that common opponent. So I think they still got the edge if they went out. I think they're definitely the best chance of a one-loss team to get in.
Definitely do not control their own destiny at this point. They need some things to happen. That's going to be it for this week on the JP Eisenhauer Show. Remember to listen in next week. Thanks, Connell Scruggs, for joining me this week, and I'll see you guys next week.